Do you want Instagrammers or TikTokers to post about your brand? Or do you actually want to engage creators who influence their audience to buy your product? If you're in the latter of those two, you've come to the right place. Welcome to Winfluence, the Influence Marketing Podcast. Hello again, friends. Thanks for tuning in to Winfluence, the Influence Marketing Podcast. Do you know what this show is about? If you said influencer marketing, you're close, but not necessarily wrong. If you said influence marketing, you're more right. And if you said the exploration of how brands can apply influence in all its shapes and forms to aid in their marketing, you're spot on. But if you weren't spot on, that's my fault, not yours. It's an example of my marketing and communications failing to deliver the point. It's an exercise in clarity. And Steve Woodruff is probably the person on the planet with the most expertise and focus on helping businesses, brands, and leaders nail clarity. His new book is called The Point: How to Win with Clearly Fueled Communications. It's a handy guide and reminder to its readers of how to get to the point and not allow your communications to get lost in translation or drown out by the sea of noise that is our media landscape. I asked Steve to come on the show to talk to us about getting to the point. Why do we have so much trouble doing so, even when we are supposed to be professional communicators? What barriers are in our way to communicating effectively, and how can we as brands or influencers and content creators check our work to ensure that we are always getting to the point? We'll ask him all those questions and more today on Winfluence. As always, this episode of Winfluence is presented by Scipio.ai. We are helping brands transform their digital marketing with user-generated content, videos, and images at scale. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Shopify data shows user-generated content quadruples your ad click-through rates. UGC drives as much as 7 times more engagement on social media, and UGC improves website conversions by as much as 29% and email click-through rates by as much as 73%. UGC is also more trusted by consumers than even traditional influencer content, and Scipio.ai is building the next generation of visual content management solutions. Now, while we fully bake those, Scipio.ai can plug you into your own community of users, find those who create great content, and help you engage them to do it for your brand. Your digital marketing performs better. You don't have to go looking for content to use for paid or owned campaigns, and we've got a team to manage it all for you if you want. Come see us at Scipio.ai if you want me to personally show you the platform and how we can solve your digital marketing performance problems with high-performing UGC. Just go to jasonfalls.co/Scipio. Fill out that form, and I'll personally set up time to chat with you. That's jasonfalls.co/Scipio. Are you effectively communicating your point with clarity? Steve Woodruff is next on Winfluence. Steve, great to talk to you again. It's ironic that we have someone writing a book geared toward leaders and marketers and people who are supposed to be great communicators, teaching us how to communicate better. Why is it we can't get this stuff right, dude?
Talk about a problem of 8 billion human beings. Communication should be simple. Throw a few words out there. Somebody understands them, does what they're told. If only. The fact is, there's an awful lot of barriers and an awful lot of hurdles to overcome for successful communication. And that's one of the things I explain initially in the book is, what are we up against that creates so much miscommunication in all of life? Not just professional life, all of life.
Well, and I think also too, I would say when I hear you say that, I not only think of the fact that there are communications barriers in interpersonal relationships and whatnot, but I would think that just the signal to noise ratio, which doesn't get any better every day, there's more people creating more content, there's more advertising, there's more social networks, there's more channels. That's got to be, I think, a big factor in all this. Am I right in assuming that?
That's a massive problem. And in fact, the way I put it in the book is we all have one major competitor. It's the noise. So we think of competitors as a company or a person that does a similar thing that we do and that we're selling against. That may be, a competitor. But the competitor is everything else that somebody else could be thinking about, listening to, be distracted by. And you're right, the volume just keeps going up and up and up and up. And it's harder and harder to win the battle for attention.
That's true. And I think I don't know if it's probably a combination of our media environment, but then also people who the psychologists and social workers and people who I've talked to about things like attention deficit disorder and things like that. These things have always been around. They've only just been defined well enough in the last few years for us to understand them. But I would
Right.
think that the signal to noise ratio with the environment we live in today, at least in the Western world, has got to be exacerbating the fact that there's ADD. I mean, the simple fact that when you turn around and look at anybody in any situation these days, they're doom scrolling their thumbs or thumb doom scrolling their phones, looking at content after content after content after content for a fraction of a second, moving on. So whether you're a marketer or whether you're just trying to communicate your art or anything like that, you've got about a second and a half to figure out how to grab somebody's attention these days, right?
Yeah, it's an amazing amount of stuff. So people are now in front of some form of screen, average Americans, between 7 and 10 hours a day. And that's what we're up against. And people check their phones an average of between 100 and 350 times a day. So the ability to even concentrate is almost non-existent because the interruption cycle of all the stimulation, all the alerts, all the different types of communication coming at us is absolutely enormous. And it's been estimated that the human brain processes or is processing every second 11 million bits of information from all five senses. Think about that. Every second, 11 million bits are flooding into this brain, and you and I talking and focusing on one another, that focus is 60 bits. So
Holy
the
moly.
big battle for all of us as communicators is we've got to win the 60-bit battle of attention and focus, and we're up against 11 million bits of competition. So your email, your presentation, your podcast, your coaching one-on-one meeting, your everything has to win at the moment of truth. Do you win focus or do you not?
So you talk a lot about clarity, which I believe was the name of your last book, I think. You describe in this new book, which I have a handy copy of right here. It's called The Point by Steve Woodruff. There you go. You describe in this book about the 4 dimensions of clarity: purpose, direction, expectations, expression. Take us through those, and what do we need to know about them?
So clarity is, a lot of times we think about clarity just in terms of the words, and that's a big enough challenge. But the fact is that we can't really be clear in our expression, in our words, unless we're really clear in where we're going, in what our purpose or direction is. So one of the first things I often do with individuals who are feeling out of focus, don't know where they're going, is we've got to narrow down what they're exactly aiming for. What are your strong suits? What's the marketplace you need to be in? What's your message? And a lot of times companies, teams, and individuals don't have a clearly articulated purpose and then can't share a clearly articulated purpose with others. So that makes it real hard to say, come on along with me, when you don't even know where you're going. So a direction and a strategy has to be set based on a purpose. So clarity involves clear thinking about where we're actually aiming. And that is included in the way we plan our communication. So if I'm going to send you an email, Jason, I have a goal for that email. I want you to reply in a certain way. I want you to do a certain thing. I want you to think a certain way. If I can't articulate to myself what the purpose is, I can't send you a purposeful email. I'm just going to throw words at you and hope something sticks. And clarity is something we all need at every level of life.
That reminds me, I don't think my mother in her emails has a purpose because they meander around for hours almost. She's the master of the 15,000 word email that actually has no point. So maybe she should read your book too. The purpose, direction, expectations, expression. When I'm reading that, because of the strategy work that I do, it really parallels and is there are synonyms for the strategic planning. If you're basing your business strategic planning on goals, there's your purpose. You define that first, and that informs the direction you're going to take, the channels you're going to use, the tone of voice, etc., the target audience you're going after. The expectations are those benchmarks along the way that you're going to measure to see if you're accomplishing what you're doing. The expression, I guess, would be then the creative that comes to life to take that strategy to market. Is basically what you've done here with the point is taken that sort of strategic planning and put it into both business and interpersonal communications framework for people.
So the focus of the book is primarily on the expression part. How can you design good communications? The fact is, we're all communication designers when you think about it. If you write an email, if you do a podcast, as we're doing now, you're thinking through, you have a purpose, you have a goal, you're designing the flow. So we're either good designers or we're bad designers. The purpose of this book is to help people understand how to become good designers. So there are 4 rules, 8 tools that anybody can apply. But you want to understand that the area of purpose and direction and expectation really demands clear thinking and clear expression. Expectations in particular for leaders and managers. Not only do we have to set expectations for ourselves, we have to clearly articulate expectations for those we're leading and managing, or they can't fulfill their purpose. They can't do their job. They can't succeed. So some of the chapters in the book are really focused on how leaders need to practice clarity, not only in their thinking and expectations, but then in the way that they say it.
So the meat of your book, I think, expands upon what I would call the sort of strategic planning process, and you've wrapped them into "you shall" statements, which I absolutely love, and they really mirror that good strategic approach to marketing. Take us through those if you can, and give us those "you shall" statements, which are sort of directives for people here.
Right. In the book, before I do the "you shall" statements, I have a "you shall not" beforehand. And I talk about, because the brain has to filter through so much information, you shall not overwhelm, you shall not be vague, you shall not confuse, because these are the things that cause people to lose attention and not really process what you're saying. But on the positive side, as a communication designer, the 4 steps are, first of all, you shall have a point. You've got to actually have a purpose and a reason and something you are saying. And you and I have both been subjected to speakers who are going up and rambling around, and you're sitting there, I mean, does this guy have a point?
Exactly.
I mean, what's going on here? And it is so common, and the human mind will lose interest. If we don't know what the point is, we've got this to go to at any time now. I can tune you out in a second. So first, you've got to actually have a point, and I have some tactics for that. Then you've got to get to the point. That's the second rule. You've got to get to the point means very quickly. You've got to show people the relevance, the importance, give them something interesting so that you earn that 60 bits of focus. The third step is you've got to get the point across, which means I can't just throw words out. I'm actually looking to get synchronized on meaning and understanding. So I have to make sure that your ideas of what I'm saying and my ideas of what I'm saying are matched up. which means we have to illustrate, we have to tell stories, we have to define our terms so that we're actually thinking the same way. So that's the third step. Have a point, get to the point, get the point across. And then where the rubber meets the road is we're trying to get on the same page. We're trying to reach alignment and agreement and action. So, for instance, if you're leading a meeting and you have a half hour, 45 minutes of discussion, somebody's got to make the same page at the end of it. Somebody's got to say, here's what we said, here's what we agreed on, here are the action items. And so much communication is just left floating in the air to be forgotten, misinterpreted, misunderstood. So great communication follows that flow, whether it's a book, a podcast, even a 30-second TV ad. You know, what's the call to action at the end of the 30-second TV ad? Call your doctor and ask about Jason Follerex, okay? So that's getting alignment and getting action. So you can use that 4-step model for anything. Teaching, sermons, marketing, sales, anything.
Pretty good stuff. We are talking to Steve Woodruff. He is the author of this here book there called The Point, How to Win with Clarity-Fueled Communications. We'll certainly have links to that in the show notes. But when we come back, we're going to talk about how The Point can help brands, agencies, and creators. Don't go away. Welcome back to Winfluence. We are spending some time with my pal, Steve Woodruff, whose new book, The Point, How to Win with Clarity-Fueled Communications, is out and about in the Amazons and all that good stuff. We'll make sure to have plenty of links for you, and we'll tell you how to get to those here toward the end of the show. But Steve, we're talking to people on this program in the influence space. Let's start with an influencer or a content creator. A lot of these folks are creating content, but may have never thought about a real point of maybe a singular piece other than to just be entertaining, or maybe a point of their overall channel or the individual videos. What are some ideas to help content creators and influencers be more on point?
Okay. So the biggest problem with any kind of content is too much unstructured information. When you dump information on people, when you dump the haystack and they've got to find the needle, you've lost. You've unskilled, poorly designed information. And that is the biggest problem for all content. So one of the most valuable pieces of the book is a tactic I call stratifying. Now, stratifying is, if you imagine a pyramid with 3 levels, the top level is the point, the distilled essence of where we're going. Here's what I'm trying to get across to you. And I want to get to that point real fast in order to hook your attention, win that 60 bits, and show why this matters. So I might have in this mass of information something really important, but if I don't bring it to the surface quickly, you're not going to find it. So we have to start with a point. That buys us, that earns us the right to then give a little more background, a little more outline, a little bit of backstory, provide some context. That's the second level of the pyramid. That then earns us the right to go into any details. So the way this works out is, for instance, if you think about a book, okay, the title and subtitle of the book, that's the distilled essence. That's the hook. The table of contents, that's the second level. And then all the words in the chapters, that's the rest of it. We actually use this all the time. Clinical papers in medicine are structured exactly this way. Here's what we found in this study. Here's how we did this study. Here's all the statistics, and here's all the details. Well, we can use the same structure for an email. The most important visual real estate of an email is the subject line in the first sentence, because people are scanning through their inbox. They're making split-second decisions about what's important, And if we don't front load the relevance into the first couple lines, we risk being lost in the shuffle. Same with a speaker that gets up front, has 30 minutes, but you better tell me in the first minute and a half why I should care, because if you don't, I'm tuning you out. So the stratification, the bringing the needle out of the haystack and letting people know, is the most important tactic any content creator can use. And it's something that is doing people a favor. You're being unkind if you're unclear. You're making them work too hard if they have to figure out what's important. Tell them up front what matters.
You know, it's funny that you use the pyramid as an analogy because, you know, my original education was in journalism. And in journalism, you learn the inverted pyramid, which I like both illustrations because obviously yours is not inverted. The point is at the top, and that's where you got to put the core distilled information. In journalism, it's inverted, and the way they explain it is you've got to put all of the who, what, when, where, why, how has to be the first couple paragraphs because people don't read the whole article. So you got to get all the important stuff up top, and then you put in some details kind of in the middle, and then you funnel it down so that the editor can chop the bottom of it off, essentially. But I think it's kind of funny that how the inverted pyramid in journalism actually can be flipped over and in your vernacular sort of used as a regular pyramid, and it still makes the most sense. So,
well, as you know, in journalism, there's also this crucial principle: don't bury the lead.
yes.
And that means you don't take the most important thing and put it in paragraph 7. For the very reason you people are going to look at something first, you got to grab them fast. So sometimes what you want to do, the way we learned in academia was you go through all this stuff and then you have the conclusion at the end. Well, by and large, what we really want to do in most of our communications is we want to have the conclusion up front. Then how did we get here? And then reinforce the conclusion at the end. But if we're going to make people go through a whole bunch of gymnastics to arrive at the point, they're not going to. Nobody has time for it.
Well, and you think about, you know, how people, the advent, I think, of a lot of the misinformation, miscommunication, fake news, et cetera, on the internet, the advent of that consumer sort of behavior trend, I think, is that people aren't, you know, getting the truth and the facts up front. They're seeing a headline that was written to get their attention, but they're not reading the lead, as it were, and they're not getting deep enough into the story to really understand what the headline means.
Mm-hmm.
And so that sort of changes the way consumers react to news. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how the creators could approach using your approach to be better. I assume the same certainly applies, and you indicated that this is, you know, important in all communications. But are there any special tips or ideas from your book that you would share for brand marketers or even the agencies that serve them that would help them? Because we're professional communicators, or are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I see a lot of marketing communications, a lot of advertisements, as you mentioned earlier. We've seen a lot of speakers in the marketing communication space who get up on stage and they don't have a point. They meander too much. So what are some tips and tricks for the people who should know better, but don't?
So one of the things that I open the book with is the idea that we've talked about, that our major competition out there is all the noise. We all have one competition. But also, we all have one common customer, and that's the human brain. And the human brain wants information the way it wants it. It has an operating system. It has likes and dislikes. All 8 billion of us on this planet actually want information in common ways. So I explain how that works in the book, and then I give what I call 8 brain-friendly shortcuts. These are the word packages that the human brain likes. These are the things that turn the light on. And I started the whole list with S's, so they're all S's. Okay? So statements, simple, clear statements. Snippets, little bits, little pieces. We can latch on to little bits more than we can a whole white paper worth of stuff. Specifics. We relate to the specifics of something as opposed to gross generalities. So if somebody said, there's a big traffic jam in Louisville, Kentucky. Okay, fine. If they say there's a 4.2 mile backup on interstate blah, 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 starting at exit whatever, that rings, okay? Because we latch on to specifics. Then stories. We know the human brain loves stories. That's how we transmitted information for years. So we need to use stories skillfully to get our point across, not just bare facts. Stakes. Explain what the stakes are. I don't mean STEAKS. Now, I know what those. I know. I wanted a T-bone as well. But what's at stake? What's the risk? What's the cost? That alerts our brain. That makes us say, oh, this is important. Why? Well, there's a lot at stake. If there's $1 million sale at stake and my communication skills suck, you know what? I better do something about that. Okay? Symbols. Symbols is my favorite. Symbolic language. So analogies, metaphors, illustrations, word pictures. People can latch on to that. So if I say, Jason Falls is the Mercedes of podcasters.
You'd be full of shit, that's what you'd be.
Yeah, obviously. But what I've said is high quality, exclusive, awesome, desirable, all with one image, all with one comparison. So we use symbolic language all the time. And it's the quickest way to create a picture in somebody's head and turn that light on. Another of the shortcuts is side by side. So we compare things. This is this, but this is like that. Compare and contrast. So you take something that's in their head, and then you say, now, let me latch something onto that. Oh, I see that. And then the last one is summaries. We have to give people brief, succinct summaries. So if you take those 8 S's, those shortcuts, as a communication designer of any sort, anything from a nursery school teacher to the President of the United States, everybody can use those same 8 tools to be a great communicator to any audience in any language.
Very good stuff. And for the record, I believe I'm the clown car of podcasting. That would be probably a little bit more accurate there.
Well,
yeah, I'll take it. Why not? At least
you
it's
got
got
have
wheels.
some memorable image, so that's memorable.
It's got wheels and it can fit 47 people inside of it. There you go. So besides buying the book, what's the one thing that people out there need to do to get to the point?
So a lot of my work is doing professional workshops for companies and for nonprofits and for groups and even for individuals. So a lot of times people need help figuring out how to get to the point, figuring out how to work on their marketing message. So the book itself is a mechanism for people to learn a lot of these principles, apply it as much as they can themselves. But I'm also available to come in and do corporate workshops, team workshops, keynotes to help reinforce some of these principles so that people can bring it up into their awareness. And then as teams, and this is the real power. For me, one of my biggest passions is seeing teams embrace a language of clear communications together so that they can reinforce each other. And one of my goals with this book is to provide a language of communication that transcends different silos. Sales, marketing, operations, executive leadership. We're all actually using the same principles.
Where can people find the book and find you on the interwebs?
On the interwebs, stevewoodruff.com or LinkedIn. Just find Steve Woodruff. I'll be there. The book is in all the usual places online, and it's also it's through Morgan James Publisher, so it'll be appearing in physical bookstores, although, as we know, most people buy stuff online. And that's the best way to find the book and to find me.
That's good stuff. We're going to make sure all of those links are in the show notes. Steve, as usual, incredibly useful, incredibly helpful stuff. And thank you so much for spending some time making us smarter today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
So what is your point? Can you deliver that in a sentence that everyone can understand? Good reminders for all of us to revisit that from time to time. Good stuff from Steve Woodruff. Check him out and find the links to the book in the show notes. Just go to jasonfalls.co/Steve Woodruff or visit jasonfalls.com. Click on articles in the upper right and look for the episode on that page, or find the Steve Woodruff episode on my Instagram. That's @JasonFalls. And comment on that post with hashtag the point. That will DM you the link you need, thanks to my pals at Stampede Social. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone else who may as well. And if you're enjoying Winfluence overall, help us grow and tell someone about the show. You probably know someone who might want to know more about influence marketing. Send them to winfluencepod.com or share a link to this episode on your social network of choice. If you have a moment, drop Winfluence a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. We are on them all. The show is now on video as well. Just look for Jason Falls Winfluence on YouTube to see the show as well as hear it. Winfluence is a production of Falls and Partners and presented by Scipio.ai. The technical production is by MPN Studios. Winfluence airs along MPN, the Marketing Podcast Network. Thanks for listening, folks. Let's talk again soon on Winfluence.